Would you say it's hard for a large organization? You have experience with AT&T, like we were discussing, to really have your entire customer service and sales department treating people like humans. I feel like it's probably impossible to do that in a really large organization, but you just gave a great example there.
It is impossible. I'm not saying that everybody at either of those two organizations is going to hit a home run every time. The fact that it's impossible doesn't mean we shouldn't try.
Great point.
Depending on which motivational speaker you're listening to, Thomas Edison made 100 light bulbs or 1,000 light bulbs or 10,000 light bulbs. We don't know. But every time he made a light bulb, and actually he didn't make them, he had a team of engineers, he had 20 engineers working for him. But every time they made a light bulb that didn't work, their response was, there's one more way not to make a light bulb. So with your customer service people, with your sales people, they will not be any better than their leaders. So you want to start making some changes in the customer-facing, we call it, customer-facing positions. You start with the leaders. I had a small number of employees. I left AT&T, started my own company. Went from 1 million employees to 1 employee. Boy, was that rudely shocking. I couldn't dial a 4-digit number and get people to come in and help me. So eventually I started hiring people. We had a customer from hell. His name was Irv. We could not please Irv. There was nothing we could do. Irv would not break one of my rules. I had 2 rules. You can't ask us to do something under the table, and you can't have any sexual or racial innuendo. I mean, it's not language, innuendo. He wouldn't break either of those rules, but he was obnoxious, and he was hard to deal with, and he was demanding. And so I told everybody, if I'm off the road and I'm in the office, Irv calls, you put the call to my desk, and I'll take it. If I'm on the road, tell Irv I will call him at my first break. And I had to do that. If I had a break and had something else I needed to do, I had to call Irv. So I'm standing in front of my employee's desk one day and the phone rings. We had a rule. When the phone rings, everything else stops. You pick up the phone. She picked it up, put it on hold. She said, Irv is on line 2. I rolled my eyes back in my head and said, Irv. I just gave her permission to be rude to Irv. That's how simple it is.
Right.
Now, the customer's not always right, but the customer is always the customer. If we cannot treat them well, if they can't have a better experience with us than they have with anybody else, we need to let them go. Go ahead.
I was just going to say one important thing that you really touched on there that a lot of companies don't do is you said when the phone rang, everyone dropped whatever they were doing to answer the phone. And a lot of companies simply don't answer the phone. And that's step one of honoring your customer and putting the customer first.
Our rule was it never rings twice. In fact, because whatever's on the other end of that call is going to be better than anything we're talking about. Got this electronic key system. Got this really nice phone system for the office. And understanding the network. This is back before cell phones. I modified the equipment so that it would recognize before the call came in. There's this electronic pulse that goes out to make sure that the circuit's good. So our equipment would trip. And quite often people would call us and we'd start talking to them before they heard an audible ring. And I had to do this because I spoke at the National Speakers Association, best practices. And they said, what are your best practices? One of them is we learn to answer the phone before the second ring. And they said, oh, good. I just gave away one of my differentials. What's the next step? You answer the phone before the first ring. Well, that's impossible. If you think it's impossible, it is. I happen to know something about the network, so I modified our equipment. We can answer it before the first ring. It's not until you put it out there. Your job as a manager, as a leader, as the owner of this business, is to constantly raise the bar, not lower it for people who have not found a way to get over it yet or don't want to, but to continually raise it. When you see, you are where you are, and I am where I am, because somewhere along the line, somebody stretched us beyond our perceived limitations. I don't think I can do that. We're going to have to. And we put on our big boy pants and we go and we make it happen. When you're doing that for a direct report, for the kid who lives next door, for your kids, for somebody in the community, when you do that for them, you're taking them to the next level. Did you hear the word, by the way? When you do that for them?
Yeah, I didn't pick up on it at the time, but now I got it.
Well, there we have it. I had a client in Chicago. He had a pretty good business. He called me one day and he said, I've never fired a customer. I think I need to fire this customer. I said, well, okay, tell me the circumstances. And then he told me that whenever he called in, he was so mean and rude. He called into his call center. He had 6 females working in the call center. Quite often, one of them would run to the bathroom crying. I mean, you can't have a customer. I mean, people like that don't deserve a place on the planet. I said, well, if you fire him, you're going to have to replace his revenue. You have to replace the business. You got to go down. You got to come back up to not have anything. I said, so how much business did he do with you last year? And I hear the computer keys clicking. He said, $1,800. And so what were the margins? About 8%. Fire him. I mean, he said, I don't know how to fire him. Next time you're in Chicago, come with me. We'll go fire the customer. Raj, we went out, sat down, and we gave him that we think you would be better served and we know we would be better served. You know, that kind of sermon. He teared up on us. He said, your girls, his word, not mine. He said, your girls are the only people who were ever nice to me. I wanted to say, hello. It's not the world. It must be something coming off of you, right?
Right.